Oh, there's the piss poor volume again. Let me get this fixed, folks. And I'm sorry for the lack of professionalism at the Talamanca Review here, but I don't have a production crew here, folks. It's just old Bruce in his bodega, hiding from the family. So, welcome. I'm Bruce McDonald. This is the Talamanca Review. It's Friday, the 24th of October. Another month gone. I mean, it is just mind-boggling to me. 7:31 p.m. And I am absolutely convinced that time is moving at a slightly different pace now. This is my contention. Tonight we're going to do the Wisdom of Max Part 3. And I want to reflect on the first two. And I want to really express to you how I feel about Max as a being, an eternal being expressed through the body and life of Max Spears, and as in many ways a master warrior, even though he died by violence and probably black magic, but he was a master warrior. And I have a lot of reasons for believing this. A master warrior is somebody who has learned everything there is to learn about the martial code. Okay, now the martial code has different domains. So there's a purely physical martial code, and the masters of that are, the Gracie family in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and people like Joe Rogan, and people who spend all their day in the gym. They become masters of the martial code in the physical domain. But the martial code goes way beyond the physical domain, way beyond it. And in the higher domains, it's much more important not to make any mistakes. Okay? If you're in a street fight with a drunk and he doesn't know how to fight, you can make a half dozen mistakes that he won't capitalize on because he's not a scrapper. He's not a fighter. He doesn't know what he's doing. Right? But in the other domains, you can't really make any mistakes. And war extends up to at least, I'd say, 3 dimensions, 2 dimensions above us. The 4th dimension, or the astral, it's not really a field of war per se, but it's a constant balancing between a negative and a positive polarity in a middle zone. And then up when you get into causality and time, where time is maintained in our reality, you don't really need a martial code there, but there are certain malevolent beings, even at that level of consciousness, that can tinker with time. And we did it. We did it after World War II, and it's part of the reason we're having so many problems now with aligning the reality into a cohesive narrative. The lamb lies down with the lion, or the lamb lies down with the wolf. Classic. That is the most apparent Mandela effect that I'm aware of. And there's many more. I caught one on Wallace Stevens on my show one night. You guys remember? And that's a result of the martial code going into time. But I don't think that was done to us. I think that was done by us. I think that was done by human beings experimenting with alien technology to project consciousness into time, take over a body in another period of our time, usually a correlate body of the spiritual being that occupied it in that time, meaning a previous incarnation. This is not my theory. This was explained to me by one of my super soldier friends. Okay? Very fascinating stuff. I wrote extensively about this in The Devil in Us in one of the last chapters of the book, that I titled 3 Books, 3 Schools. And I described, what it was like to learn all of this stuff. And if you're in this alternative field, learning this stuff, if you get all the way through it, you'll come out of it with stronger faith. If you get snagged on anything and you can't solve it spiritually or overcome it, you'll spin, like a dryer, a clothes dryer. You'll spin for a while until you get out of the cycle and overcome it. And all of these challenges, for one reason or another, were put in front of me. When I started reading about this crazy stuff the government was doing, going back to, oh my God, going back all the way to, I think I knew about David Icke, I think in like 92, even before I went to Taiwan. So this has been like a 33-year journey. And as somebody who had, until that time, which would have had me in my late 20s, I turned 30 in 1996. And so from 17, for about 5 years, I'd been steeped in scripture. And I'd never come across any material like this. And it shakes your faith. And so what it does is it shakes your faith, because you're going, well, are these, if the U.S. government and various factions of a global alliance can do all these things, is my faith true? Is what I've been taught by my spiritual instructors true? Is the scriptures true? Universal sense, not just the Abrahamic. And it kind of rattled my cage a little bit. And I took it as a challenge, and I decided that I was going to learn everything I could learn about these things. And it's funny, because you go through it all, and you meet all these extraordinary people, like 3 Books, 3 Schools. The third school is intelligence, DARPA, military consciousness. So we've got Eastern consciousness with the profound demonstrations by Buddhist adepts and masters. It's profound demonstrations by master yogis and various contemplative schools. You read about the profound revelations of Ibn Arabi in the 1200s, the extraordinary Islamic mystic. I advise all of you to study Ibn Arabi. You'll come to a new respect for Islam. It's not what the media is telling us it is. Aspects of it are. What the Muslims they're throwing at us at the West, from Afghanistan and Pakistan and all the backwaters, that would be like taking those hillbillies in the Appalachians from Deliverance and saying to the world, this is Christianity. It's just not true. And there's a force, there's a power that wants us to make us believe that is Islam, and it isn't. Okay? So, just let me get a coffee here. There we go, back at you. So it was a long and profound journey for me to figure these things out, and lo and behold, most of the stuff was true. But it doesn't really change my understanding of God, and it doesn't compromise the spiritual teachings that have been given to the human race. It's just that nobody had ever documented the hacks to our reality before. I suppose, in grimoires and stuff like this, and they exist everywhere, but they're really sort of banned. If you get caught with a heavy-duty grimoire in the Islamic world, and you're not a cleric, and you're not studying it for a caliphate and providing reports and stuff like that, you're independently studying it, you could be put to death. They take magic and witchcraft very, very seriously in the Islamic world. Very, very seriously. But I had never seen these things, these things that these super soldiers were talking about. And then it really started in about 2012. I think it was a gentleman by the name of Doug Dietrich who introduced me to all of this stuff. And he himself was the product of some programming, I'm quite sure. And I don't know why, but for some reason, a lot of these types of people like to take a run at me. Dietrich took a few runs at me. He came at me in a dream one time. I saw him in a dream, and I had two dreams with him. I hope you folks know who I'm talking about. He was a very popular radio personality on Revolution Radio about 12 years ago. And I remember having a dream one night with him, and I woke up and I was looking down on his body, and I could see through his skin, and there was a translucence to his blood. It wasn't blue the way unoxygenated, not unoxygenated, but the way blood inside the body is supposed to be. It's blue inside the body, turns red when it connects with the outer atmosphere and the oxygen. And I said, that's not blood. And then a couple months later, he was talking on his show about how he had this synthetic blood transfusion. And I went, wow, okay, so that dream I had was prophetically insightful. It was true. It was a little bit of clairvoyance. And then one time he attacked me in a dream, and he sort of like poked my shoulder, and when I woke up in the morning, I had full recall of the dream, and I woke up in the morning, I was a little tender in the shoulder. So these things go on. That was very mild, compared to the attempted attack by Andrew Bartzis, which was like full-on food poisoning coming on in 15 minutes, but it wasn't food poisoning, but that's how dreadful it felt. And then your internal state goes completely to hell, just the blackest thoughts you could ever have. And I went, this isn't normal, and I went into a meditative trance, and I figured it out and discharged it all. It's not hard. Once you have the Holy Spirit with you, you can take on almost anything. It really is the trump card in the universal bridge game. So I went through all of these things, and and I guess somehow I was meant to learn these things. I mean, some spiritual teachers, living in ashrams might say it's a waste of your time, just ignore it. But I think it ties into my journalism and communication mission, that I can help explain this to people of sincere faith, whether they be, Christian or Muslim or, Buddhist or whatever, people of sincere practice. Because it is quite a hurdle to get over it can really, and that's its intent, by the way. Its intent is to rattle your faith. It's almost like being underwater in a cage and having a big 20-foot great white just try to ram right through the bars to get at you. It can be a bit unnerving. And then Max comes along, and Max, in realizing the value of the heart, what Max did was give us the Marshall Code for this time. That's what he did. He fulfilled the mandate of the soldier. And he went from being a super soldier, which is a psychic operative, to being a kind of spiritual warrior. And that's why I respect him so much. And more so than any of these other people who've come out as super soldiers, and they're not fully healed. I mean, they just go on the podcasts for bragging rights and stuff, right? And tell stories like it's a bar room, and I did this, I went on this mission, and I fought this alien race, and it's just on and on and on and on. What they never tell you is they weren't They weren't fighting on behalf of humanity per se. The secret space program is not for humanity. Okay, it's serving something else, not maybe groups of human beings on this planet, but not humanity proper. But the maturity of Max's outlook comes through in his commitment to the heart. Because the human heart can overcome everything. It's simple. You know, you may seem like Forrest Gump to your opponent. Stupid is what stupid does. You know, and people of accomplishment in certain initiatic circles like Masonry or Rosicrucianism, where they're all into developing themselves psychically and astrally and everything. You know, they may meet somebody of faith and true practice and go, oh, isn't that cute? He's a true believer. Maybe next life he'll be given some knowledge and grow like us. Incorrect. The heart path is the only path. Okay? Everything else, there is no calculus to God. How many times do I have to explain this? How many different ways do I have to say this? There's no trigonometry in God. There's no calculus. Okay? If you want to study the universal mind, yeah, there's a lot of thinking, a lot esoteric thinking, which is a different form of thinking, which is very prominent in the Kabbalistic study. It's a system of metaphysical thinking and conceptualization that opens portals, powers, and principalities, and it makes them available to an individual human consciousness, making them extremely dangerous because they become, in a sense, weaponized, and really they're not in submission to the heart, which is submission to God. And submission to the heart means empathetic connection with everything around you, within reason. You know, don't beat yourself up if you lose empathy for, you know, your alcoholic brother-in-law who has just blown his 12th time at sobriety. You know, don't give up on him, but allow yourself to be a little frustrated, you know. Oh, that's okay. You know, sometimes a firm hand is necessary. Now I'm going to explain to you why Max was right and why the heart is the ultimate martial tool for survival in all states, even beyond physical. It's because it's what God values in a human being. Okay, we weren't created to be big brains. Human beings were created to hold incredible amounts of the God force, and this is why we have such a strong heart center. And this is what makes, you know, if you've spent an hour in this UFO world, you don't get a strong sense of heart presence, do you? Okay? Not at all. You don't get even a strong sense of heart presence from the Nordics or the Palladians, you know, let alone the Greys or the insectoids, the mantis or the reptilians. You don't get a strong heart presence from them. Human beings are what have the heart presence, and that energy that they call loosh, that's what they're robbing. They're robbing our heart energy, and it's extorted by creating emotional traps that sort of squeeze it out of us the way we would squeeze a cut grapefruit to make grapefruit juice. That's what they're doing. Okay? And so your only defense against that is centeredness in the heart. And if you can practice and learn that centeredness in the heart, you're going to be very well off. And even though Max was murdered at the age of 37, I'm pretty sure, I don't want to speak out of school here, but I'm pretty sure that he was received well on the other side. And that's important. Well, every life we live is to make us more masterful in the spirit world, okay? Because we're developing consciousness. We're developing awareness. So a perfected soul is a soul that has gone through the journey of awareness that transmutes consciousness to awareness. Pure consciousness is inert. There are forms of consciousness in creation that don't even know they're conscious. They haven't woken up even to the fact that they're conscious yet. And this is why the consciousness starts in the lowest form in a planetary system. So the incarnation process begins in the minerals. It goes through everything, man, plants, insects, sea life, everything. everything until you finally arrive at a human incarnation. Now, that's not true for every human being on the planet now. A lot of them are imported souls who did their developmental work somewhere else, and they've come in here to help rebalance the Dolores Cannon story or variations of that story, which in principle are true. Okay? Don't worry about the details. And you don't even have to worry about it at all. They're going to do their work whether we know about them or not. Don't worry about it. They're like cutter ants, right? So they're just going to do their work. Don't worry about it. So the heart is the context that ultimately wins every battle in the long run. So that may be difficult for some people to believe, but context is everything. One of the games going on now, and I learned this going through this epic journey of the third school, DARPA consciousness. And, we're just the cattle of more intelligent species than us. Yeah, in some ways that is true, but you don't have to be. You can break the bond, You can be the cow that jumps over the fence and goes and lives off of wild foliage in the forest and doesn't worry about the farmer or being butchered anymore. Okay? And this is what coming out of the Babylonian system means. You have to go feral again. You have to go back to the root of life and own as much of your life as possible. The land you live on, the house you build to live in, the food you eat, you need to own as much of it as possible. Nobody's going to hit 100%. Well, the Amish. The Amish do it, let's be honest. The Mennonites do it, But they're Germans. I mean, Germans are just exceptional at everything, man. What are you going to do? The other exceptional people, other than Jews, are the Germans. Just an absolutely exceptional people as far as I'm concerned. So the idea of detail and context, I'll illustrate it with a funny little story. For those of you who know anything about mixed martial arts, one of the most technically and practically efficient fighters of the 20th century and early 21st century was the best practitioner in the Gracie family, which was a Scottish-Brazilian family. Their roots were Scottish immigrants, and they were trained in jiu-jitsu by a visiting Japanese samurai who was escorting Japanese settlers to Brazil. And the Gracie family helped the Japanese settlers, and as a courtesy, the samurai still exist. They're not the official Japanese military anymore, or private military of a Japanese warlord. They don't exist at a functional level, but as a tradition and a practice, they've never stopped existing. And they took what that Japanese fellow taught them and just kept working on it, and they perfected their own system of jiu-jitsu that they call Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And it's one of, if not the most effective one-on-one fighting form in the world. Okay? You literally can't go into a mixed martial arts contest now without knowing jiu-jitsu. And better if it's Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and better even then if it's Gracie jiu-jitsu. So, what would you say if I told you that I could kick the shit out of Rickson Gracie, or even Mike Tyson, in their primes, if I get to choose the context? You'd think about it, and you would never consider what context means. You would never consider what Max means when he talks about the heart as the greatest defense. But what if I were to tell you, and people would laugh at me, you've never trained jiu-jitsu, you're kind of out of shape, you boxed a little when you were young, in your teen years, you trained a little bit in your 30s and 40s, but you haven't trained for a year, and you're going to beat Rickson Gracie or Mike Tyson in their prime? And I go, yeah. And they go, okay, what's the context? And I say, well, the context is I played 13 years of competitive hockey. in Canada, our national sport, till I was 15. Started skating at 4. I'm a whiz on ice. And hockey's a very physical game. You learn how to use the body, the hips, to take people off balance and throw them to the ice. You learn how to fight secretly with the stick and hope you don't get caught and get a penalty for spearing or cross-checking or slashing. And I would say I could beat Hicks and Gracie on ice. And then everybody goes, when I used to tell this story, they go, yeah, maybe. Like, what would he be able to do? He's never been on ice skates before. I'd be whipping around him at 25, 30 kilometers an hour. I could go behind him. He can't see me. Come in, put my stick behind his ankles and just flip him up on his ass and crack him on his head on the ice. And then come in and slash him with the stick, and he'd beg me to stop. I could win the fight in my context. In spiritual warfare, the heart is the ultimate context, and this is what Max teaches us. Okay? And this is why I value him so much and respect him so much. So with that, again, relatively long introduction, let's take another look at some Max.
It ended and hijacked at the Altamont concert with the Rolling Stones, with the ritual killing. With the Rolling Stones are a satanic band. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't like some Stones songs, because I do, but I know that there's an agenda behind it, and I know that the death of and I've forgotten the name of the person that died at the Altamont, but it was 1969.
Yeah.
And that was the sort of end, and then
it was protected by the Hells Angels, which are a Masonic order. Absolutely,
yeah. And the Hells Angels had to be there for the ritual to be correct. They had to have those. Hence, sort of Hells Angels is sort of a double bind in and of itself, isn't it? Really, because you sort of wouldn't have angels in hell, would you?
Yeah.
So even the word hell, even the term Hells Angel is could be is a trigger word. There's a trigger word in and of it, or trigger words in and of itself. Any double bind is. Anytime you put two opposing thoughts or thought ideas into one sort of term, you can trigger somebody with it. So where are we at, Miles?
We're at the control of the planet by.
Yeah.
And how the whole media industry, the whole entertainment industry is full of this paedophile stuff.
So
I mean, as we speak, there's a huge report that's about the Jimmy Savile thing going through.
Yeah.
And also the another subject which we discussed was a gentleman called Aquino. Do you want to say anything about that?
Well, I don't know enough about really to go into too much to tell you too much about him.
Yeah.
Because there's legal implications to do with that, because he was involved in a legal trial, and I'd rather sort of let the people who know about that specifically, like I think you probably go to Douglas Dietrich for information on Mr. Aquino, but there's certainly if you just pull the covers back a little bit, you'll find massive connections to the Temple of Set, the Church of Satan, and they're all interconnected, and they're trying to bring about. They're playing out a storyline. They're playing out. They're using revelations from the Bible as a storyline, as a storybook, and they're trying to sort of. That's why that's the most embedded book, and King James altered it and changed it around and inverted all of true Christ's teachings. True Christ's teachings weren't really anything to do with most of the stuff that's written in there. The core of Christ's teachings were about compassion and caring about other people, and not about.
You have a vengeful God and all that.
All the Old Testament.
So many fascinating things in that clip. Now, first of all, you know what the Altamont killing was, right? Everybody, if you're around my age, I mean, I was a bit young, but I learned about it when I was growing up. And there was this free concert that the Rolling Stones gave in, I think it was Altamont, California. and they hired the Hells Angels as security, and the Hells Angels ended up killing some dude. They stabbed him to death. And that's gone into history. And again, so it's again, context. I think the job of anybody trying to do journalism now is presenting the right context. Okay? Because details are so easy to be manipulated. Yeah, Hamas did attack Israel on October 7th. Why? What's the context? What was the motivation? Well, because they have sworn to destroy Israel, Bruce. They hate Israel. Can't you understand that? Yeah, okay, but this has been going on since 1947, the first Nakba, right? And the first mass murder by Jews. And, again, you haven't really answered my context question. And that's why they keep throwing in all the evil Muslim rhetoric into the media, because they want that to be their explanation for why Hamas attacked Israel. The true reason is, again, the Temple of Solomon, because they know what's going on. The Islamic world is more spiritually literate about the dangers of the temple than the Western Christian world, because they're just more spiritually and religiously and occult literate than Westerners, because they live in a religious society, which has a yin and a yang. There's very bad things about it. I'm not saying there aren't. But that's, I think, the real reason was the Temple of Solomon. But my point is that the confusion, where they blur the lines in giving us information, is they muddy the context. They never really want us to understand the real causality of events is, after World War II, all these Jews went over there and started killing Palestinians, and their landmass that they're able to live on has been getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so every time they lose land, it's because of something they allegedly did. And then the counter retaliation by Israel is so intense that by the laws of warfare, the Palestinians lose more land. It's almost like, I truly believe the context is that it's a deliberate provocation by the IDF and the Mossad, and they want the whole world to remain stupid to this. I would go so far as to say that if you're not going to define the heart as your context for all warfare, if you abandon that and you want to get into cunning, planning, multidimensional attacks, black magic, necromancy, gematria, astrology, what's the best date to do this? I would say that the masters of war on the planet now are the Jews. And that's a compliment, because mastering anything is difficult. Anything. Mastering how to write a novel is very difficult. Mastering jiu-jitsu is very difficult. But the Jews have mastered warfare. If you were to read Sun Tzu's Art of War and have it explained to you by a Chinese classicist and studied with him for 6 months, and then you went over and you studied with a group of Orthodox rabbis or Chabad rabbis, and they let you in on what Judaism really is, you would put the two things together and you say, okay, Sun Tzu said this is what war is. These guys are the absolute masters of war, and they are. And it's hard for the human mind to get this because, again, Jews aren't an incredibly physical people. They don't put a lot of time and effort into that. Their soldiers are tough, there's no doubt about that, but they're not like Joe Rogan types. That their strength comes in studying the Zohar, the Talmud, the Kabbalah, doing study groups with their rabbis. And Judaism is literally a form of warfare with the ultimate goal of ruling the planet. That's what it is. It's not a religion. Okay? It masquerades as a religion. Anyways, I go on these tangents, right? I can't stay on track. But I suspect it's enjoyable. So, circling back to Altamont, Can anybody remember when that was? If for anybody who doubts that was a ritual killing, because when I first heard Max say that, and I saw this interview years ago, and I forgot all about it. And then, as I said the other morning, and I wrote it in the essay, I woke up and it just popped into my feed, and I rewatched it, and I went, I don't think I understood how powerful this was the first time I watched it, and how much he was saying, which is why in the first installment of this series, I compared it to the Tao Te Ching, the incredibly compressed information into these dense and precise statements, that if you don't have experience as a contemplative or as a super soldier or any kind of experience in the multidimensional reality, it's very difficult to verify what Max is saying. I can verify it, and I'm telling you, he's telling the truth. So, but even knowing that, when I first heard that Altamont may have been a ritual killing, I thought, I don't think so. I mean, I think that was just some guy who, got really high on a bad trip, started to harass the Rolling Stones and maybe threw some glass at them or something. And then when the Hells Angels went in to throw him out, he started to fight and they stabbed him. I thought it's a bit of a stretch. And I remember in that phase of my comprehension, I remember thinking, this would have been 10 years ago, these people from this world, it's all about this double entendre that nobody else can see. And sometimes they spread the butter so thin on the bread that if you took a bite of the bread, you wouldn't taste the butter. I don't believe it. Well, here we are 10 years later, and we have this much more fully fleshed out internet. We have AI research tools, and lo and behold, if everything Max was talking about is not being proven true. So you have to remember 1969. So as I wrote in The Devil in Us, there was a moon mission about 3 weeks after the Manson killings. So the Manson killings were in August of 1969. And so the general idea is that the creators of the counterculture, the hippie movement, and it was created. Okay, this is not an organic, naturally occurring thing. I hope I don't have to go into every detail about this. I hope the Talamanca Review has explained sufficiently that you understand. Okay, you get Tavistock, Brave New World, Create a Pleasure Society, introduce LSD, all of these things. This was a DARPA-created culture. The psychological consciousness development of DARPA, the third school of consciousness, Eastern consciousness, Buddhism, Vedic, Western consciousness, and, the Abrahamic religions. And the third school is DARPA intelligence consciousness, which is toxic. Don't seek any spiritual clarity from it. Stay away from it. It's all toxic. It's just toxic. So you had the Manson killings, and then recently we had the book by O'Neill, Chaos. And he makes very strong correlations between Charles Manson and the MK Ultra program. Not that I don't know if he'd win in court, and you're never going to win in court because these people don't leave court evidence. And if they do by accident, and somebody comes into possession of it and figures out what it means in context, and then starts to talk about it or call newspapers, that person disappears very, very quickly. You don't live. Okay? I'm okay to talk the way I do because none of this information was given to me. I kind of figured it out all on my own. I had some help from John and Bob and, other people, John Z, my super soldier, but I kind of figured it out myself. And I don't speak in a way that's actionable in court. I'm speaking to the heart. I'm speaking to the living being inside the body. I'm speaking to you. I want you to understand these things to help protect yourself in the coming days, weeks, months, and years. That's why I do this. So I'm of no real threat to them, although they're aware of me. There's no doubt about that. You don't have 5 consecutive nights of dreaming with rabbis beginning the day you publish The Devil in Us, December 5th, 2023, and not walk away from that realizing they're aware of me. They're aware of me. But I don't break spiritual law, okay? And I love them. I never break the law of love. And Christ taught this very well. Max talks about that. By the way, he also talks about the weaponized version of the book of Revelation that was changed in the King James Bible. Okay, what have I been saying on the Talamanca Review? It's not a prophecy, it's a plan. It's a war plan. It's a multi-generational war plan. Okay? Done, executed or conceptualized by forces much more intelligent than human beings. Their only limitation is they have to work through the agency of human beings. So the weakest point in their plan is the human beings, because we're very fragile and unpredictable beings, human beings. So even if you're a very dark species living in another dimension, and this portal opens up, between you and human beings, and you say, okay, well, we can suck some energy out of this world, and we can come to control their planet from our dimension, and we can teach them how to open up a portal so we can go in and physically take over their planet. These things are all real. There's a reason they're making Avengers movies about portals opening up, and the Chitauri, the army of Thanos coming through, and then the Avengers fight them back, and Tony Stark gets the nuclear weapon up into the portal, and it blows up, and they win that battle. Okay? There's a reason that's in the public imagination, because it's real. I mean, conceptually real, not literally real, or astrally real, but not yet physically manifest in a way that we all see it. And so they do movies like that to bleed off the collective psychic impulse of human beings that would begin to pick up on it. Oh, what are you talking about, Bruce? That just sounds like a Marvel movie. What do? I mean, you sit around, smoke weed all day and dream this shit up? So that stuff's done to make people like me look stupid, and other people. But it's not working anymore, because I know you folks understand what I'm saying. Okay? So you've got O'Neill with Chaos, you've got Manson, you've got this whole moon thing that is starting. Okay, so you've got Star Trek, which has already begun. I mean, look at all the seeds they planted in the 60s. Like, it's mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. And Altamont was definitely a ritual. So do you know what had happened? It happened, hang on a sec, I just had it up here. It happened December 6th, 1969. So a few months after a space mission, August, September, October, November, like 4 months after Manson. And just look at the date, December 6th. So December is the 12th month, 6th day, that's 666, right? You can start to kind of, you don't have to study gematria. I mean, this stuff is just like an open book now. It's everywhere you go to look. Okay? So this is another thing that Max, taught us, was how to read these things. And how how to see through them. Okay? Let's take a look at another clip.
This false reality that's manifested and created here is done by embedding images and sounds and ideas into children's minds, and then you grow up having and thinking that also textbooks, like we were saying with children's textbooks, you're given what the fundamental ideas of what we're told history is, and how we're told the world is, and then that is then put to the conscious mind, and then so we believe it to be, so then we manifest a false reality. So we're living out a reality that really wouldn't be isn't our natural state at all. So that we're kept in a sort of a. Anytime a child reads something that is vile, it may want to come back and see it again, because children have that sort of that need, but or that desire to like look at something they're not supposed to. But it does give them like a traumatized reaction, and that traumatized reaction, that energy from that traumatized reaction, can then be harvested. That works as well through. Excuse me. The movies, the horror movies that are coming out now. Like, I used to think the horror movies from the 70s, the Italian horror movies from the 70s were the most like intense and the most gruesome that you could be. But they've taken it a step further with the extreme nature of like the Saw movies and like those movies. All the movie theaters themselves are also built on energy grid points. So to harvest the energy from the fear of the people watching the movies. So
the whole thing's set up.
Yeah, to make sure, because fear energy is the best energy for them to then take and then go and create to create the false reality. They don't understand the love energy. They don't understand it. Their mentality is to conquer and destroy, and it's always about self-preservation, conquering and destroying. They don't take care of it. This particular consciousness doesn't take care of its young. If its young are weakened, it discards them and throws them away. The mammalian consciousness feeds its young and nurtures its young, takes care of it. Whereas that manifests how they are as adults as well. They have no time for anybody who's weak, or anybody who has a disability, or anybody who is physically less than. They think that as a.
So some real bombshells there, So we'll start with the children's programming, and it's just gotten worse every year since Max passed. A full decade, and we now know that Disney is one of the biggest mind control agents out there, right? There's something very, very satanic about Disney, and I think Walt Disney himself was, I'll hold my tongue on this and do more research and maybe talk about it in a future podcast, but there's something there. I don't know what order or society he belonged to, but there definitely had to be one, because there was just too much going on in his material for it to be random or, accidental. And again, the idea of the children's programming. Now, let's talk about this and tie it into either yesterday's or the first part, I can't remember now, on Max, The Wisdom of Max, where he talked about to conquer a people, you have to destroy its innocence. And to destroy the innocence, you attack the children. So, in a general way, all of the children are attacked now by the Western culture. Okay? And let's have a moment of honesty here. Okay? When the Islamic world calls the West the Great Satan, are they really that far off? Now, I'm not pitching Islam at you here. I prayed with the Sufis for a year. They tried to get me to convert after a year and said I couldn't go to the Durga anymore and pray with them. A year was long enough to make up my mind. And I said, okay, I've made up my mind. I don't want to be a Sufi, and I don't want to join the Durga. If it's mandatory, I become a Muslim, and here are my reasons. So I understand flinching when I mention Islam. I understand your knee-jerk response, but you have to learn to think from the heart and overcome your own prejudice and cultural chauvinism. And most importantly, the heart recognizes truth. And so when the Islamic world refers to the Western world as the Great Satan, in context to what I explained to you folks on the Talamanca Review, and specifically what I'm explaining in the Wisdom of Max series, can you really deny it? You know, even if you use Satan as a mythological placeholder, meaning that the entity doesn't even exist, right? But it's basically represents the adherence to a negative principle through discipline. Because Satanism takes discipline. It's not a purely pleasurable path. Okay? You have to do, human beings, to survive in that system, have to practice discipline. Okay? Don't ever for a moment think that this is a bunch of teenagers dressed as goths in the Michigan woods doing a salt pentagram and lighting some candles. That's not Satanism, that's experimentation, like, you know, two girls kissing in the 12th grade. I'm not really lesbian, but I tried it. You know, that's not Satanism. I'm talking about the real hardcore intergenerational aspect of it. And they do, Max is right, they do, if their children are too sensitive and cannot be broken into the satanic system, they murder them. They murder their own children, okay? And he said there's particular forms of consciousness that do this, whereas the mammalian consciousness, which is us, or our line of evolution on the planet is mammalian. Mammals, we're a mammal. He's clearly referring to the reptilians, right? And we're clearly in a life and death battle with the reptilians now, okay? So that's how it goes. So when you look at the children's programming now, it's absolutely, it's vile. And that's part of the campaign as well. All right, I'm going to end it there for tonight. This is the Wisdom of Max, Part 3. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.